Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick, and today's tutorial is on virus infections. Viral infections, specifically coronavirus. I didn't put corona on the front, or at least I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put corona as a clickbait issue. There's so many coronavirus videos, but just for my patients, I'm going to talk to you about what to do in this flu season. The flu being influenza and coronavirus infection. Hopefully it doesn't come to us in Illinois, but you never know. For those of you who watch me from around the world, you too have to be careful. So this is the first time you're finding me though. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever it is, on your phone or on your laptop. And then the notification bell when I do new videos. So, the coronavirus. This is a virus, and it's something called an RNA virus. And RNA and DNA are just codes of four different bases, I guess you could call them. And the four different bases align in some uniformity to give you a map. And the map will, when it's translated, will give you a human being, or it'll give you a bat, or it'll give you a virus. And viruses are ingenious. It's very impressive. I hate to say it, but it's impressive to know how they evolved, because these viruses infect. Take a look. You can Google search online about how the coronavirus looks. And it's corona because the outside shell of this virus has these little protein molecules that allow it to attack or connect to its host. Once it connects to any of the cells in your body, in the host body, human for this case, it'll launch itself or inject itself into the cytoplasm. That means the fluid of the cell, any cell, whether it's hair cell, skin cell, muscle cell, heart cell, glandular cell. This virus attaches to the surface, and then once it attaches, it injects itself into the cell. And once it gets its RNA from inside itself into the cell, it starts to take over the replication, which usually occurs in all of us in the nucleus, to let us live for 103 years. Well, this clever virus gets in there, and it takes over the machinery. When the cell, say the skin cell or the hair cell or the lining of the gut cell, is supposed to reproduce itself, it lives for a while, it reproduces, regenerates, and then after a couple of regeneration cycles, it dies, just to make sure that we don't go into a cancer development phase. Well, this virus learns how to get into that cell, get into the nucleus, and take over reproduction. And the reproduction, once it's taken over, it produces nothing but more viral particles, and the viral particles erupt from that broken cell, and they infect other cells until the host succumbs. So the specific thing with the coronavirus, or now it was called 2019 coronavirus. Now it's called CVIDS, coronavirus disease. CVIDS-19. That's with Geneva. There's a meeting that's occurring with all the biggest brains in the world as far as pandemic infections, and they're getting together in Geneva to come up with a strategy for analyzing this viral outbreak. This is called a novel virus. The Coronaviridae, or the coronavirus family, it usually starts in animals, and then once it inhabits the animal and takes over the animal and kills the animal, or just gets the animal sick. It sometimes, if it's a large enough population, it crosses over, spills over to humans. It's not supposed to do that, but that's how smart the virus is. It can go from an animal, whether it's a bat, a monkey, a camel, and if it regenerates itself enough, then the contact between that animal species and human species, if it's close, will spill over. One of these hosts will spill over into the next host, and then that's when humans get it. And specifically, when you get the coronavirus 2019, CVIDS 2019, you will end up having an lower respiratory tract infection. So upper respiratory tract is snot and a little bit of wheezing and a little bit of cough. Low respiratory tract infection could be a pneumonia, could also be something called ARDS, adult respiratory distress syndrome, or acute respiratory distress syndrome. That's not a good thing to have. By the time you have that declared, you're probably already in the ICU on a ventilator, and there's certain things that can be done with the ventilator that'll get you past the ARDS. But the problem is, if you are a smoker or unhealthy, have medical problems, on a ton of medicines, or older than 50, the likelihood is high that you won't do well if you get infected. So that's why it's really important. I always stress trying to have a healthy lifestyle, no matter what decade, no matter if you're retired or about to be retired or right into middle age or young. I don't care what it is, but I always want to shoot for a healthy lifestyle because of the challenges of the next decade. And if you think you're challenged now and you're too busy, wait till the next decade because other challenges come up that you didn't fathom. So if you wait until then to try to live a healthy lifestyle, you're going to be behind the gun. Anyway, if you smoke, if you're sedentary, if you're overweight, if you have multiple medical prescriptions, the chances are a little bit higher that if you get the coronavirus, you will have a problem with it. But in this case, when you compare all viruses, there's something called lethality or mortality rate. That's when you, at the end of when the virus burns out, because it usually does. Humans and the CDC and the World Health Organization are really good. CDC is American, World Health Organization is world. But both camps, both groups are excellent with reacting to an outbreak of disease. And that's why China supposedly locked down two cities at this point. And that's why America, Japan, a couple other countries decided not to take people in that were trying to fly over from the infected city in China. In fact, there's 2 or 3 cruise ships that are floating around. They can't find a dock because no country is willing to accept them. I mean, a cruise ship, I think, that can hold the equivalent of several hotels, like 1,000 to 2,000 patrons, and then 1,000 staff. That's a lot of people. So imagine if there was an exposure on that incubation ship, which is what it is. I mean, whether you're on a ship where they recirculate the air, or on an airplane there where they really recirculate the air, if you're not infected, cool, but the chances are high, just like being in a city. If you're in a city in China where it's just rampantly spreading, the chances are high if you stay in that city that you're going to get the contagion or you're going to get infected. And the problem is, again, not everybody has succumbs to death or the ARDS or respiratory distress syndrome. It usually starts out as prodromal fever and cough, maybe a little diarrhea. It was noted that some 1 or 2 patients had diarrhea, but typically it's fever and cough, the prodromal symptoms of any infection. I remind you that in 2019, 2020, the influenza has already killed like 10,000 people in the United States. So, but if you look at the amount of people that it infected or influenza infected, you're talking the proportion of or the mortality rate is like 0.1 or 0.2, I think. So it's not too bad. However, if you look at SARS, which is a coronavirus 2, it's a form of a coronavirus. SARS, the mortality rate was like 10%. So 1 in 10 people would die if they got it. This so far, you can't really determine. You have to put the amount of folks that died from the disease over the amount that had the disease, and you can extrapolate out to find mortality rate. But you're not supposed to do that until after the disease has run its course. If you have good numbers and reliable numbers, you might be able to calculate it beforehand. But who knows the numbers coming out of China? I'm not sure if they're controlling the data that's flowing out or the reports. I mean, there's so many things that can skew the numbers. But at this point in time, I think it's about 2%. 2% of the people that get it will die of the disease so far. But here's the thing. Usually if you're exposed, and you can be exposed to somebody that's coughing, and it's wise to avoid the person that's coughing. Usually I'll say get a mask on you, or get a mask on the person that's coughing So the droplets that they, when you do that, you can't see it, but when you when you cough, you spread these droplets. And if if one of the droplets of the many droplets you spread out has the coronavirus or enough viral particles in it, you can inhale that and it can go. The other, it's supposedly aerosolized too, which is really biologically bad. And it also has a half-life where it can exist on fomites. I mean, store handles, pens, for like 5 hours. So you really have to be careful. Hey, washing your hands and not touching your face are important. Supposedly, if you come in contact with something, your skin is okay, but you keep the virus on your hand. And all you have to do is put it to mucous membrane, go like this by mistake, or go like this, and you've just rubbed it on the mucous membrane. It's going to get into the body. Skin, it probably won't penetrate, but we normally touch our faces without even thinking about it. That's why even if you have the crappy mask, if you put a mask on, then it'll remind you not to touch your face, which is good, but most people won't put a mask on in the United States because it looks funny. The real mask is this, the N95. So they don't have this. I think it was too expensive to get. But I work for Advocate Medical Group, and they have protocols at this point in time, because it's not pandemic yet, has to be in all countries of the world. But it is in like 20 different countries. However, this is supposed to protect you a bit. I got this at Home Depot because I couldn't back order it. My wife tried to get a couple. The office tried to get a couple. Office was barred from doing it, but my wife couldn't get them because they're all in back order. I found this at Home Depot. So I grabbed whatever I could, and I'll probably get more, because you're supposed to use this one time only and change it, and then get another mask on if you're a healthcare provider before you see the next person. But I feel really bad for my guys who work in the urgent care center, because they're going to get a lot of people. I mean, this is an influenza season. They're already getting a lot of patients that look or smell like or test positive for influenza, which could be a lot of the same symptoms. In fact, as I mentioned, influenza's mortality rate is low, 0.1, compared to SARS, which is like 10%. And at this point in time, if I didn't mention it, CVIDs, or the coronavirus of 2019, is about 2 to 3%. That's with basing it on the information or statistics that are released from China, but I don't trust the information. I think there's something, unfortunately, notoriously, the information was leaked out slowly. That's what happened with SARS. That's from 2003, I think. So I think that you cannot force a country to give you all its statistics. But I think in the end, because a pandemic will stretch outside of the country, the true properties of that virus will show itself when you get outside the country. And so far in the United States, there have been a few. Canada, there have been a few people, but it's early because the incubation period is 2 weeks, which was why I was explaining why you should probably use gloves, soap. It's not hand sanitizer, it's soap, to mechanically with water get things off of your hand, and a mask to prevent on the person that's coughing, and also to remind you not to touch your face. So the idea is, if you can, and it's proving to be very effective, especially when you're on a plane. If you can remember not to touch your face, cool. If you can remember to always wash your hands I would say at a regular interval, top of the hour. I think it sounds really cumbersome, but I think at this point in time, probably a good idea. If you just plan on remembering to wash your hands at all times, you'll forget. I mean, it's not a common thing that we do, but if you remember top of the hour, 9 o'clock, oops, I haven't washed my hands yet, let's go. So, and that's, again, it's not hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is alcohol. So you can kill some things. I'm not sure you can kill coronavirus with alcohol, but washing with soap and water will mechanically move things away. In addition, the soap will hopefully kill or deactivate some of the surface of the viral particles, or maybe the biofilm that the viral particles hang out in, the droplets. So I think it's better to hand wash when you can get it. If you can't, get some hand soap, bottle of water, and go like this and get a bottle of water and rinse it off on top of a garbage can. So who cares, right? I think that, again, the most important message I can get to my patients, is that if you are in a social situation, then please try to avoid hand washing. I'm handshaking, definitely hugging. So I go to church every Sunday, and and my church has a lot of Filipinos. I can't tell which Filipinos just came over, or if they're more Chinese, or if they have been to China. I can't tell, but now there is somewhat of a lockdown on a lot of airlines coming into the United States. However, again, the viral exposure and incubation is from 14 to up to 24 days, from what I've understood now. So you really have to be careful that the death rate now and the infectivity rate and the recovered rate are still early, because it's such a long incubation, and you can be exposing yourself and be infected and pass the virus to other people without even feeling fever or cough. So that's the brilliance of this virus, is the body will not even manifest a fever or cough or chills or diarrhea yet, and yet you'll have enough viral infection particles in you to transmit it to somebody else. So there was a case in Germany where there was some kind of a business meeting. The person that was holding the business meeting in Germany flew over from China, where the infected city was, had the meeting, finished the meeting. It's sketchy, but finished the meeting and went back. But yet in about 5 days, the other people, the German nationals that were in the meeting, also got infected. The girl or the alpha person, the index person that came over to the meeting in Germany, she turned positive and was infected. The others were already symptomatic, but they wouldn't know. At least they were. I believe the World Health Organization found out about the positive person that flew back and forth from China to Germany. And then once they found out she was positive, they traced her back, which is really cool. The World Health Organization really finds and localizes and tries to sequel the spreading. So, and that's going to be the thing you don't want to hear. But in the next month to 2 months, I would really limit the social gatherings that you're going to. As I was alluding to, I go to church, and in church there's a portion of the Mass where you turn to your neighbor and you shake your hands and you greet. And I have a problem with that. I also have a problem with the communion wafer being put into the hands. So this is just personal. For my deacons that are out there, I'm sorry, but I'm a physician and I see things blossom, and you might not notice it, but I will see the ones that don't survive. You might see the masses and the average Joe and Jane, and the average Joe or Jane will probably do fine. But as I mentioned, 2% at this point in time with the statistics, 2% of people that get it, that means if you have 100 people, 2 of them will pass off. And you might not know that, or might not see that in a large community gathering, like a meeting, a concert, a mass, but I'll see it and I'll hear about it because I work in the medical industry. So that's not good when you lose one person. So that's why, because I know that what could happen, and it's probably going to happen in the next month, because we're just having people turning positive, but the people they came in contact with, and that person, which is, I guess, not really an index person, but the first person in the United States, I believe there's something called the R0, and that's the infectivity rate of a virus. And for measles, it's fantastic. It just takes off. It infects, like, for every one person, it infects like 4 to 8 people. This one with a CVIDs or coronavirus 2019, for every one person, it's about 3 people that one person can infect. That's the amount of people that you can infect, and it's called the R0. So the R0 value is not too bad, but again, it's really early. We don't have that much information because we're only having one source, and it could be biased. So we have to see how other people outside China fare. So, but it is getting to the point where it's almost pandemic. I would say, because the World Health Organization is calling it an emergency, global, I would say just prepare for it for coming around. So how do we prepare? Staying healthy, washing your hands at all times. If you're going to travel like I am tomorrow, I'm going to keep goggles. It's going to look funny, but I'll pretend I'm sleeping, and I have sunglasses that are glacier glasses, so they're kind of blocked off. not exactly sterile, but better than nothing. And then I have the N95 mask, which I'll bring with me. And it looks funny, but who cares? I'm going to be on a plane for about 4 hours, but it's on the East Coast and it's going to the Caribbean. So hopefully it's not the same contact with any of the flights coming out of China, but I'll still be taking precautions. I'm going to be washing hands top of the hour, wearing my mask, gloves if I have to, especially with a neighbor that's coughing. Hopefully not, knock on wood, but we'll see. So if you prepare, and then I'm going to try to avoid social gatherings, so I'll stay out of the crowd. If somebody's coughing, I'll move away. So when it's droplet spread, when you cough, average human will cough and propel a droplet about 2 yards or 2 meters, 2 to 3 meters. So that's about one average person lying down on the ground. That's the height of about an average person. So if you have somebody that's coughing in your direction, just stay about 2 meters away or 1 body length away. Hopefully that'll be good. That's 1 body length lying down on the ground. Hopefully that'll be good enough, but don't hang out with that person. Don't high five, don't fist bump, don't shake hands. What I've seen in Africa is they elbow each other. I guess that's safe, but then you're coughing into your inner elbow, so I'm not sure that's really safe. But I saw that's just nice to see because they're proactively doing something. They're not ignoring the fact that people like to greet each other, even in times of what doesn't seem like illness, but in times of plague, or not plague, but infection throughout the world. People in church will still go to shake. In fact, I've seen some instances where people they really want to shake your hand, and if you don't shake their hand and just say thank you, they'll get somewhat offended. I had one person on, I think, I forget, one of the review websites for doctors. I didn't shake his hand because the time that I took care of him, there was an outbreak. So I just said, I don't want to get you sick. And he didn't even shake my hand. So some people obviously take offense to not greeting the typical human way, but you know what? Just bow out. I was thinking of wearing a splint on my arm to avoid shaking hands in church, but then my family, my son and my wife, would have to be exposed, and if they don't have the nerve to say no thank you, or just peace be with you, I was thinking of putting us all in a splint so that it looked like but that looks kind of funny. 3 people in the same splint, right hand, can't shake a hand, I have a splint, we all fell down on the right hand. That sounds funny, but so you see how it's uncomfortable not to shake hands. So should you avoid social situations for a month to 6 months? No. And it's not good to start a panic, but at the same time, if I gotta take care of you, I mean, worst case scenario, if you have influenza, you're gonna be out of work for a week to 2 weeks. If you have coronavirus, and if they test positive, which they may or may not be doing nowadays, I don't know. It's supposed to be a swab that the hospital sends off to the Department of Defense or the CDC, and then they, in a matter of hours to days, they'll test it and kind of find who's positive and work backwards. I don't think all hospitals have the swab. The influenza swab is a nasal swab, which is a little uncomfortable. It's only a second, but if you get enough of the viral particle, you'll test positive in a rapid test, which is really cool. That's one of the things I like about Western medicine, is the technology is cool. So if you are positive and you have access to a place that can test you, we can get a positive test. Once you're positive, 2 weeks isolation. So even if you have no symptoms, then I think that's what they're doing on the cruise ships. They're not retesting. They're just looking to see if you have any symptoms of fever, body aches, cough, rhinitis or runny nose, diarrhea. If you have any of that stuff, then they'll say you're positive, and I think they'll go ahead and test you. But if you have nothing at 2 weeks, then you're considered negative. Then you can, I think, get off the boat. So that's what they're doing, if they can find a port that they can disembark on. But no country is taking those 3 boats, those 3 ships. I mean, it's a lot of people. Up to 3,000 people. Hospital, probably the biggest hospitals in Chicago probably hold 500. So taking a cruise ship would really stress out the medical system, because you have to house them, then you have to feed them, then you have to take care of them. I mean, it takes several hospitals of the city to take care of one cruise ship. So I can understand the problem. However, I mean, if you're negative on that cruise ship, you're going to turn positive sooner or later because it's just an incubation petri dish. So I don't know how this will turn out. Hopefully, if the statistics or if we can read what's happening in China and see how the rest of the world is reacting, how people are getting sick, this will hopefully be a non-lethal to the majority, lethal to only like 2 to 3%, I hope, viral particle. And in the next year, hopefully we'll be able to find a vaccine. In the next few months, you'll probably find a re-blossoming of an old antiviral or an old, like there's HIV drugs that sometimes work to quiet down the coronavirus replication. Maybe they'll find other antivirals that have been used in other viruses to affect the coronavirus, but that's why it's called a novel. It was called a novel virus because the humans haven't been exposed to this virus yet. So supposedly it came from bats, perhaps, or a snake. But usually those there are many different viruses that affect humans, that affect other species, but usually they stay within the species. Sometimes you'll have that spillover where they go into other species, which is what happened with this coronavirus. So, I mean, bottom line is I hope the folks that, if this did come from bats, I hope the people that really enjoy eating bats as a novelty learn their lesson and not do this anymore. But I think at this point in time, China has outlawed wild animal selling. So that's a good start. I think they did that after the SARS virus, but I don't know what happened with that. Hopefully they'll learn not to do this again. MERS also the same thing. So hopefully this gives you a little idea of what I would do. Hand washing, mask up, avoid, and or direct contact, avoid that. So hopefully and stay healthy. I mean, ultimately, if you do get infected, it's really important to stay healthy, eat right, sleep deep, and exercise. So if you have any comments on people around your area that became positive, put them down below. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe because I put out videos like this a couple times a week. See you at the next video.